Since the spring of 2020, the world has been dealing with a pandemic, keeping us locked in our homes, waiting for the storm to pass. However, COVID-19 is not the only issue that has come to light over the last 12 months. Mental health problems soared during quarantine, only furthering a massive issue that we knew we already had, with over 40% of Americans admitting to struggles with mental health. One of the most common of these disorders is depression, aka major depressive disorder. It is clear to see mental health has become a major crisis. However, there could be an unlikely solution in the form of psychedelic drugs like psilocybin and LSD, which may pose a cure to the growing issue of mental health. I'd like to start with a quick disclaimer. I'm not encouraging anyone to self-medicate using illegal drugs. Psychedelics have very powerful effects and should not be taken lightly or outside of a medical environment. I'm going to start off my speech by elaborating a little bit more on the issues of depression that we see in the United States. Major depressive disorder is a common mental illness characterized by negative feelings. It can cause symptoms such as fatigue, feelings of worthlessness, loss of interest in some of your favorite tasks, as well as suicidal thoughts. According to the National Institute of Mental Health, over 17 million Americans suffer from major depressive disorder, and that makes up about 7.1% of the U.S. population. As I previously mentioned, depression can lead to suicidal thoughts, and suicide has become the 10th leading cause of death in the United States. And is estimated 1.3 million people attempt suicide every single year. You would think with an illness this widespread affecting so many people we would have a cure, right? According to the NCBI, it is evident that the ideal antidepressant has not yet been found, as there's three major problems with the ones we currently have, which is intolerance, delayed therapeutic onset. It can take a couple months for antidepressants to even start having any effects, and limited efficacy over time as people develop tolerances. It can also be very hard to find an antidepressant that works right for you. For some people, it could take months or even years to find a particular antidepressant that just makes them feel, normal or all right. I have a personal experience with antidepressants. Actually, I was diagnosed with major depressive disorder last year. I knew I had it for a while, but I always had coping mechanisms. With quarantine, those were eliminated. I started antidepressants, and they were actually very useful for me in crisis. However, over time, I noticed changes in myself. I felt I was losing parts of my personality, like my sense of humor. I felt incredibly dull, and decided that it was best for me to go back to my coping mechanisms rather than the medicine that is supposed to help for this illness. Now that I've given you a brief overview of how major depressive disorder affects Americans and how antidepressants are often ineffective, I will now move into a possible solution to the problem, which is psychedelics. Psychedelics are defined as a class of psychoactive substances that produce changes in your perception, your mood, and processes cognitively. This category of drugs includes things like LSD, psilocybin, aka magic mushrooms, DMT, and ayahuasca. Many of these drugs gained recreational popularity in the 60s and 70s and quickly received really negative stigma as they became a Schedule I substance in 1970, which means they have no recognized therapeutic use or pharmaceutical value. For reference, cocaine is a Schedule II drug. It is recognized to have some value, so if you want to see how that differs, you can look up all the different schedules. This law in turn shut down much of the research that was being done on psychedelics and really delayed what we could have known for over 30 years. In the past 5 to 10 years, testing of these drugs has kind of reemerged and being done. I'm going to first talk about studies on microdosing. This phenomenon, which is regular ingestion of small quantities of psychedelics, which is typically about 1/20th the regular amount, of full dose. Microdosing has become very popular in modern culture and has shown promise treating depression. According to the NCBI, current microdosers scored lower on levels of dysfunctional attitudes, and they scored higher on levels of wisdom, open-mindedness, and creativity compared to people who were not microdosing. There's also been some studies on full dose psychedelic therapy, which has also shown some promising benefits. A study done by Johns Hopkins had individuals ingest full doses of psilocybin, and 60% of these individuals showed an over 50% drops in feelings of depression after their 1 week visit. And after their 4 week visit, 54% of recipients had so few symptoms that they were actually considered to be in remission. Dr. Ronald Griffiths, a professor of psychopharmaceuticals at Johns Hopkins, said, because there are several types of major depressive disorder that may result in variation in how people respond to treatment, I was surprised that most of our study's participants found that psilocybin treatment was effective. This effectiveness on a wide group of people is incredibly promising and could be like the gateway to finding the cure for depression. Overall, the stigma of these drugs is slowly being lifted, and someday, hopefully, we'll have them legalized for mental health purposes. Psychedelics provide an exciting new opportunity in the antidepressant sphere. Though we currently have medicine that does work pretty effectively for some people, it's far from perfect. With further testing, these drugs can seriously limit the issue of depression, helping millions of Americans potentially save some lives. And my notes are on my laptop.